Let's give him a big welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Well, I can say good afternoon now. It is 1:12. It's great to be back in this church building. It brings back lots of memories. My here with me was in fact a member of the church here, and I think he baptized his best friend right here. So, you know, lots of memories of the church. I think I've spoken at events here and evening events and all sorts. So it's great to be back here. The talk is entitled My Silk Road intentionally because that is the memoirs that were launched in August last year. And if you wonder why it's called My Silk Road, it's very simple. First, even before the book was done, I can tell you my 70th birthday, yes, was right in the middle of lockdown. And we couldn't celebrate, apart from Sunita and me. Unless you were in Downing Street, you couldn't do it. Fact. So we decided we would celebrate. She had a glass of champagne you brought to me, I remember, my 70th birthday. No family, no relatives. We had plans for a big do. And she said, let's put the Zoom on because the kids will join on Zoom. I said, all right. So up comes the computer. Zoom comes on, probably for the 100th time during lockdown. And there the whole family were. And then to my surprise, they said, we have a surprise for you. And they pressed a button and sharing, and a movie comes up. And they'd done a video of my life up to that point. A 1.5-hour video. They had contacted extended family relatives. Now, we have relatives all over the world, from the US to Philippines to, you name it, they're everywhere. And they contacted family, relatives. Members of boards that I've served on, public boards, contacted them for comment, for video, or write-up. And I can tell you, at the end of the hour and a half, I was probably more exhausted than had everybody actually turned up. I was absolutely exhausted, but it was wonderful. You know, they even went on Google Earth, found my old school, extracted the video of my old school, and it hasn't changed much in these 60 years or 70 years or whatever, and put that on. And the other clever thing they did, because when they were growing up, I used to love telling them stories. This was telling them stories so they could eat their food, so the mums and dads felt relieved that they were eating their food. But of course, these stories featured them, but based on a character I was brought up with in Kenya, Shoko Loko Bango She. Yes, he was a character. I actually, when I went to Uganda a few years back, one of the professors there found a copy of Shoko Loko Bango She and gave it to me, scanned it, and I've got a scanned copy of Shoko. But what I did was, they loved the name so much, so Rohan became Rohan Loko Bango She in the story. And Eliora became Eliora Loki Bango She, she's the girl. And all 7 grandchildren featured in these stories where they ended up inevitably being the heroes and heroines saving the world. And boy, did they love it. But of course, for every sentence, they had to take a mouthful. So they had their dinner and things. And so now they did it to me. They had Shoko Loko Bango She come on this, and there it was. But of course, at the end of that video, they asked me, they said, Papa, who are these different people who we've contacted? Some are meant to be uncles, aunts, cousins. We've contacted them. Who are they? We've never heard of them. Maybe you've mentioned it. Can you tell us a bit about them? So I said, okay, I will start writing about each of these names that are mentioned in your video. So I started writing. Unknown to me, our eldest son, who's friendly with the son of a publisher, Prabhu Guptara, who Rishi knows very well, and Ruth, he heard. And he said, Ram, I want to publish your book. I said, do you have that much confidence that this book will sell? I'm not publishing it. If you want to do it, you do it, but are you sure you want to do it? He said, absolutely. Can you give me the rights before you go to anybody else? I said, Prabhu, it's yours. You do it. I haven't even started talking to anybody, but no, you want to do it, do it. And so he took on the task, but he gave me a challenge. He said, I want the manuscript and the published book available on the 15th of August, 2022. 75 years since the independence of India, since partition, a very symbolic date for our family, and 50 years since we were expelled from East Africa. So I could see that. That was a real driver for me. I said, I was going to take 7 years, 5 years. You really pushed me to do something in like 14, 15 months. I said, since you're prepared to publish it, I'll do it. And you know, in August last year, when I arrived in Delhi to launch the book, there were these 400 copies in my hotel room. In fact, I arrived at 11 o'clock at night, 11:30, spoke to Sunita, I've arrived, I'm going to bed. She says, yes, you go to bed, don't even open the box. Would you hold me back holding the box? I opened it to say, what has he produced? And I was thrilled when I saw a hardback. I hadn't even expected a hardback. And I thought, wow, Prabhu, you've done an amazing job for me, thank you. And so there, the book was launched right at the Habitat Center by, those of you who know India will know the name Bachchan. Amitabh Bachchan is a household name in India. He could fill Wembley Stadium multiple times over. His sister-in-law is a good friend, Ramola Bachchan, who you will know, Bharti. And Ramola happened to be in Delhi and said, I'll help you launch the book in Delhi. And the rest, as they say, is history. But why silk? Our family were in what became Pakistan, but it was all British India. At partition, our family were Hindus on what became the Muslim side, Pakistan. You know the sad story that each started killing each other. I mean, millions died during that time. Our family, my grandfather and his two brothers had made their wealth with silk. We are traders. If you Google the word Sindhi, S-I-N-D-H-I, you will see Sindhis come from the Sindh, which is in Pakistan now. And we are traders. If it moves, we'll sell it. Be careful. In India, we have a reputation. If you see a Sindhi or a poisonous snake, don't hesitate who to kill first. So it's a terrible reputation, but you know, I always say this in India because that's what it's like. Because we are traders. And grandfather and his two brothers, look at that, in the 1890s, 1910s. Can you imagine? No telex, maybe telegram, I don't know if it was the 1910s, 1920s. Youngest brother sent to Japan to source the silk, and I'll tell you why silk. The middle brother went to East Africa, and grandfather, eldest brother, went to South Africa. These are teenagers leaving their home, getting on ships to these places that they've never been to before. And they did silk because they were indentured laborers from India who the British had brought now, after the slave trade was made illegal. Indentured laborers were brought to East Africa and other parts of the world to do all sorts of things. In East Africa, to build railways, for example. And they came with their families, and guess what the wives would want? If the husbands have made lots of money, the wives want silk saris, no less. Forget anything else. You know, oh no, not cotton, silk saris. So what did Granddad do? We will get silk from Japan, no expense spared. Supply that to all you guys, you pay the price, we'll get the profit, and with that profit, they built a palace. In Hyderabad, Sindh, in Pakistan, they built a palace. It's called Moti Mahal, the palace of pearls, moti, pearls. And in fact, just 2 days ago, a cousin of mine who got the book said, my daughter is asking where you lived in Hyderabad, Sindh. I said, Moti Mahal, but you won't find much about it because it's destroyed. Well, she Googled, and there she found the article about Moti Mahal. And my nephews, got a picture, and so it's incredible. It did exist, and it was there. It wasn't parents making things up. But partition, all gone. Jumped on a ship. Guess where they went? Yes, to Mombasa, East Africa. And there the family had a base of a business. So 47, everything lost. By 67, and the business was silk. So, that's hence my Silk Road and the play on the word Silk Road, silk and the road. And they arrived in East Africa, and in 20 years, by 67, they had built up again a big business. We were now living in a 15-bedroom flat, Mercedes cars, drivers, you name it, we had it all again. And then, Africanization policies. Overnight, Daddy got a deportation order. I described the scene in the book. You know, I've never written a memoir before, obviously, and I didn't know what memoir writing involved, so I saw something in the Saturday Times about memoir writing. So I bought this little booklet on memoir writing, and they said, to write, you need to imagine. Go back in time. Think of the colors. Think of the sights, the sounds, the smells. I was hopeless at essay writing, by the way. Hopeless. When I went to Spurgeon's College to do my diploma in theology, they asked a question, you know, Nero was a horrible emperor, discuss. I said, yes, I agree, and gave my paper. So I told Sunita, I said, look, you're good with words and essays and things. Can you help me? And so I made it through my diploma. But, you know, I'm a scientist, and we don't have too many words, you have formulae. So anyway, I read that. And so when you read the first 2-3 pages, it took me days to write them down, but I really did go back in time. And that was my theme, right through the memoirs, imagining, what was it like? What do you remember? Every sound, every smell. You know, I had to smell the lamb curry that an auntie had cooked, and I did. I thought, oh yes, she made it, and I do remember it, and it's in there on page 1 and 2. And there it was, capturing all these thoughts, all these ideas, putting them in. And of course, Sindh, by the way, just as an aside, so you know, Sindh, when the British were in India and still colonizing India, one of the instructions given by the viceroy to the army was, when you do your battles and all, you are not to go into the Sindh. Your line, because of an agreement with the Pakistan, whatever, the guy on the other side, whoever he was, the Emir or the Shah, they said, you are not to go there because that's an agreement we've got, you mustn't go there. Of course, I think it was General Jacob, he got tempted. So what does he do? He goes and he runs it over and he wins. And he sends a one-word telegram, and I love this about the civil service, a one-word telegram to Whitehall. And those of you who speak Latin will know what this says. Peccavi, P-E-C-C-A-V-I, peccavi. Those who've done Latin will know. That means, I have sinned, S-I-N-N-E-D, and I have S-I-N-D-H. It got printed, I think, in Punch magazine, and it's reported there, but they are doubtful that it actually happened. But anyway, that's the sense for you. So there we were, in East Africa, 67, deportation order overnight. I just turned 17, still a minor. And Dad had to leave straight away. He had no choice, and he left with 1 or 2 of the brothers and sisters. We were now 15 in the family. We were actually 2 families being looked after by my uncle. And again, the stories in the book of how and why, but we were warned. Because I was born on a strip of Mombasa, and this is amazing about history, you know, how the Germans and the Brits and all, you know, so the Germans said to Queen Victoria, okay, we'll gift you Mount Kilimanjaro. You know, they did that kind of thing. So Mount Kilimanjaro is now yours, Your Majesty. And of course, so Her Majesty's government said, oh, then we want that strip of land, which is the protectorate of Mombasa. And that becomes a protectorate, not a colony. So me and 3 of my sisters were born in a protectorate. Everybody else, it was British subjects, fine. I'm a British protected person. And those who were British protected were told, if you dare to go to London, you'll be sent back because you're not a British subject. You got space in Kenya, that's where you are. Daddy's been deported. My one sister got through. There was another poor girl in Nairobi. She made the mistake of flying Alitalia. Nairobi, Rome, Rome, London, London, Rome, Nairobi. 17 times or umpteen times she sent back and forth. It was called a shuttle. And so I was warned, you're going to have to go because there's nobody else left here and you're now all heading to London. You'll join Daddy there and no guarantees. And so I turn up at the airport, and the story is in the book. Obviously, I got through, and you'll see how and why, but I had to go through a queue marked aliens. Yep, they had queues for aliens. I didn't feel like an alien, but I went into the aliens queue, and there I was with this immigration official looking at me, and I'm in fear and trepidation. Everyone else is through. I'm waiting. Well, thank God I got through. But having arrived here, what did we do? I told you we are traders. Being traders, what did Daddy do? With the little money we could bring, we were allowed, I think, 100 or whatever pounds each. We were 15 of us, and we had enough to buy one corner shop in Shepherd's Bush, West London. So from one bush to another bush, here we arrive. And there we were in Shepherd's Bush, in this corner shop. What did it have? What you need? 4 bedrooms. 15 of us, 4 bedrooms, we can do that. Shop is beginning to sell stuff, well, we can do that. They opened the previous owners opened at 7 and shut at 5. Well, we opened at 5, 4, and some even joke, never shut. Well, we did shut at 7:38, and the stories in the book of why we opened at 9 later when the bingo trade was going on. But the result of all our entrepreneurial thinking meant that within 2 years, we had 6 shops. The family, extended families, brothers, sisters, working paper rounds in the morning. The previous people never did newspaper rounds. We did newspaper rounds, yes. Did so much of business, it was incredible. And again, the whole story of identifying, you know, they say you have the same pair of eyes, but sorry, a different pair of eyes and the same information. A different pair of eyes suddenly sees, okay, we saw people who looked like locals. They were white, they looked local, but we said, you speak with a different accent. Where are you from? Ireland. Ah, where is that? Is that a different country? Oh, it's different from London, from England, really? What do you miss from Ireland? Carol's #1 cigarettes. You have 555, but we want Carol's #1, all right? Irish Independent, Irish Times, Cork Weekly Examiner, and you name the local Irish paper. We got everything over here. And the Irish from 10 miles came to our shop, and we captured the trade. And so there are details like that, entrepreneurial thinking. You know, that street was shutting down. Shepherd's Bush in the 60s was a dump. You go there today, the same shop, there's a photo here of me in front of that same shop, now called, I love the enterprise. Then it was just G. Barrett Stores. Now it's Global Footwear. I said, gosh, I love it. You know, so that same shop, when I walked in the year 2000, £1 million. That entire area has been regenerated. A contribution of the minority communities to the regeneration of the most deprived parts of London and in the UK. So there we were, made that fortune, means in our terms, imagine 8 teenagers getting ready for school with 1 bathroom and toilet in a place that was an absolute dump. Well, we made it, we did it, and we're here to tell the tale. And arriving in that way, building a business in that way, of course, I'd made a commitment to to Dad, saying, I will go to university. Everyone else had done 11 plus. They wanted to get out as quickly as possible. We are traders. Everyone wanted to go in and make business. But they said, you've got 7 O-levels, all grade 1. This is from Kenya, GCSE Cambridge. He said, you've really got to go on. So he said, do your A-levels and go to university, become a doctor, or a lawyer, or an accountant. And I'm thinking, all right, I'm hearing you, Dad, let's see what I do. So I got my A-levels. Where do you go? They said, you can't go more than a 5p bus ride from the shop. The corner shop can only afford you to take a 5p bus ride. You'll get enough to buy chicken and ham pie, chips and beans. I did my research every day for all those years, chicken and ham pie, chips and beans. I'll never forget it. And a glass of water. And that's all. So what can you find in that area? So I looked around at the map, talked to the school teacher. They said, well, you'll be lucky if you get in, but you apply. So I found that the number 49 bus took me to a place I'd never heard of. It was called Imperial College. And so I said, okay, I'll apply there. Let's see what happens. And guess what? I got my 2 Bs and I got my place at Imperial. And I'd never heard of it before. But now, of course, I know the significance. In fact, when I was eventually appointed onto the board of Imperial College, they found out, one of the board members had found out when I'd run for mayor of London, which story is in the book, and some of you know that because you backed me during the mayoral race, I know that. Despite strong Lib Dem presence, you did give me your vote as an independent, I know that. Anyway, so I went to my first meeting as a governor, and there's a whole story of that as well. And I walk into this boardroom, I can tell you, what a room. Sir so-and-so, lady so-and-so, all former ambassadors, former high commissioners. I'm thinking, what am I doing in this august group? And the chairman happened to be Field Marshal the Lord Vincent. And I remember receiving a call from Field Marshal the Lord Vincent here, and I stood to attention. I said, you can't just sit and take his call. So I took his call. He said, would you consider attending the first meeting? Your appointment will be I turned up, and then he said, looking around this room, Mr. Gidoomal, you appear to be the only one who actually was a former student at this college. Do tell us how you came to Imperial College. They got the number 49 5-pence bus ride story, and the place erupted. I mean, they never heard anything as funny or as serious as that, but it's absolutely true. So there I was, Imperial, and from there, the rest really is history, because it opened doors that I didn't know existed. I got my first job in the city with Lloyds Bank International, and then it went on from there, where one of the things that really started driving me was seeing what I had faced arriving in the country as a refugee, because that was my official status arriving, and seeing the challenges I had faced. Getting that place at college was straightforward because that was on grades, and I got that. But I must have applied to hundreds of jobs. 0. In the end, I finally broke through with one job where I know how I got it, because the man who was responsible was a very fair man, a lovely Catholic man who was very fair and didn't look at anything else other than merit. And he said, no, there were 500 people who applied, and you're here by merit. I said, thank you, Lord. And of course, something significant happened in between, which I need to tell you about. And it's when I was at Imperial College. See, I come from a Hindu family. We are also brought up in the Sikh faith, because the part of British India had Sikhism and Hinduism in that part of the world, Punjab. So we would go on Saturday nights to the Gurudwara, this was in Kenya, and on Monday nights to the Shiva Mandir, the temple of Shiva. So that was Monday night and Saturday night. Some members even fasted on a Thursday, and mostly were vegetarian, but the men were allowed to eat meat. We were exempt. We could have meat, whatever we wanted, no problem. Girls, no. Religious ceremonies, Sunita's brought out, you got to attend, you got no exemption, you're the eldest girl, and things like that. So when I came to going to Imperial, the first year I stayed at home, the second year I stayed at home to help in the shop. That was part of the deal. I couldn't leave my brother on his own. And we were lots in the family, but still. Third year, I had no choice. You have to stay at college. So there I was, for the first time in my life, away from the safety net of family. Mom, brothers, sisters. Now I'm absolutely, it's easy when you're on this side of the counter in a shop. You can come to me and I'll talk to you and serve you. Ask me on the other side to start making small talk and I wouldn't know where to begin. So there I am at Imperial. Now what do I do? Where do I go? So many things to learn. It was just so that I found my way to what I call the great British invention, the pub. I said, I can go and sit there, and I'm sure if I'm on my own, that's fine. If there's somebody else there, we'll chat. And in that same pub that night, there was a group of musicians. They were singing songs and sharing stories. And one of the songs they sang was, "Put your hands in the hands of the man from Galilee." And they said, "This man from Galilee is Jesus." I said, ha, 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 there's a joke. Okay, I fell out of form. I want an argument with you guys. Jesus is not the man from Galilee. As far as I'm concerned, he's from the city of London. He wears a pinstripe suit, a bowler hat. He's white, he's blue-eyed, he's blonde. He's not from Galilee. Where are you getting that from? So they come to see me in my room, because I want an argument. I cancelled discussion out, so they came to see me to have a discussion, an argument. And he then opened the Bible for me. And he started showing me. He says, look, this is the book of Isaiah written 600 years before, or whatever. It's talking about this man. And look, this is Jesus. Read this. He is from Galilee. I said, that makes his culture similar to mine. I always thought this is the white man's God. That's what we were brought up to believe. My father, uncle, all of them said, don't go there. I was sent to a Muslim school, by the way. Even to this day, I can recite the Quran if needed, certainly the first few verses without problem. And Sikh and Hindu upbringing, I could argue this man who came to see me on any count. He was, by the way, tall, blue-eyed and blonde, and he was working in the city of London, Big John. And so we had an argument. Once he showed me that, of course, I argued from every perspective. And the poor man had no choice, no chance. He left me with a book called Good News for Modern Man. Very simple English. Started reading it, got confused. The first book is repeated the second time. I said, okay, maybe he changes the story. The third time, again, the same story. I'm thinking, what kind of a book is it where they keep repeating the story? Isn't there anything more to say? Because I'm reading it very quickly. So luckily for me, 2 boys in my physics department class in the 3rd year, still sitting next to me after 3 years. You know, when you sit in a place, for years you can sit in the same place. We are all very similar in that sense, aren't we? At least I feel, they were sitting next to me as well, the same place. And I told them what I'm doing, and I didn't know that they actually knew the Bible very well. And so David Goldsmith said to me, try reading the book of Corinthians. He knew me. I said, where is that? He said, okay, you got to fast forward. If you fast forward, you'll see here, that's it. And I read it, and it blew my mind. I said, this book could be a book for today. You know, I mean, I was brought up, my dad had bought me the Bhagavad Gita, he had bought me the Ramayana, the Mahabharata. I even had the Guru Granth Sahib, 4 volumes in English, the very first edition, which I would read every morning. I was an early riser. In Kenya, Mombasa, after about 8 or 9, the temperature starts hitting 30 or 40. You can't study. It's really hot. So I would get up at 4 in the morning to study. Me, my eldest sister, 1 or 2 others. Others would be bothered and wanted to go straight to business. So would study at that time in the morning, and I would read these books in the morning. Here I am reading the Bible, the New Testament, and it blew my mind. I just said, this is a book that could be written for today. I had been to Soho, naughty student, freedom. What goes on in Soho? I hear a lot about Soho. So this is in the 60s. So I went there. And I'd seen life there. I'd seen what's going on. And I'm reading this book, and it's describing in my mind what I've seen going on there. The sort of stuff Paul is writing in that book. And I'm thinking, this is so relevant. This could be Paul's letter to the Sohoians. This is Paul's letter to today. I'm loving it. And I just couldn't put it down till I got to the book, the last book, Revelation, and chapter 3, verse 20. And that really blew, you know, if anyone knock at the door, open, I will come in, eat with him, and he with me, or eat with her, or she with me. And I just got on my knees, literally, physically opened this huge window in my room, Linstead Hall, room 212, and said, okay, Lord, come in. I'm inviting you to come in, take over my life, enter my heart. I've confessed, my big battle was karma. My big battle was karma. Karma is basically, if you do bad, you've got to pay for it. If you do good, you'll get bonus points. And I remember sitting in that pub when they were talking, and very effectively, I say seriously, where I met Jesus in that pub, sitting down there and hearing these people singing. I said, who's paying for my karmic debt? It's a debt from generations of birth and rebirth. And if this is true, that karma is sin, and Jesus has paid for all my sin, then as a physicist and mathematician, I'm assuming that he's paid for all that as well. So I reread it. Yep, he's paid for all sin. I thought, wow, this is too good a deal to be true, but I will accept it, because I don't know how else to pay for all my sins. And really on that one truth and strength, I just said, I'm committing my life to you, Lord Jesus. I accept your sacrifice. I accept that you died for my sins. I repent of all the bad I've done. That's it. And never a dull moment since then. Of course, they say, like a fairy story, and they lived happily ever after. Forget it. Happily ever after. I went to my mom. First thing I got was a slap. How dare you change your faith like that? You can't do that. And then she said, you really are born with your faith. It's in your blood. It's in your DNA. You cannot change it. I said, I've accepted him. And the peace I've experienced since that time is something I've never experienced ever, ever, ever. I feel released. I feel my sins have been paid for. That's it. And it did begin there. Yes, there were problems. I mean, I got no time today to tell you how we're doing. It's 12:30. It's not too bad. I'm okay. Still got time, right? Things like, had I become a Protestant or a Catholic, I'd become a follower of Jesus. That's all I knew. And when our eldest son Ravi was born, who was at class with your son, when he was born in Geneva, we were running. By now, I was helping run a big business, by the way. But Sunita's uncle had invited me to join the business in Geneva. I had grown within the business, and within the 7 years, I was helping run with another cousin, Sundar Advani, same name as Bharti Advani, cousins again, and with him running this business with 7,000 people in 15 countries, turning over $200 million in the 80s. Try and equate it to today. We're talking billions. It's huge. Shipments of tens of thousands of tons of sugar, shipment of tens of thousands of tons of rice. It was huge. And there I was in Geneva running this business, and then Sunita is pregnant, gives birth to our first child. At the hospital, l'Hôpital de la Tour, it's more like Hotel de la Tour. I tell you, they do things in style in these places, like a hotel. Literally, the baby is born and there's a half bottle of champagne delivered. I said, gosh, very civilized here. and then, of course, they're so efficient, the Swiss, you have to register the birth. Of course, I went down straight away, and the registrar says, nom, Monsieur Gidoomal, prénom, Balram, Ram, address, and then she came to this question I was reading, religion. I said, chrétien, ou you can put, je suivre Christ. It's the truth. Chrétien, or I follow Christ. You can put either you like. She said, Monsieur Gidoomal, désolé, I'm sorry. Ou protestant, ou catholique. I'm going, oh dear. I have to decide. And I'm not putting either of those because I don't know what they mean. So I called my pastor in the church in Geneva, the Evangelical Baptist Church of Geneva, and I said, Derek, I need counseling. Can you meet me urgently? I have only 48 hours to decide. He said, come and see me. So I still remember going down at 8 at night. He gave me an appointment. I said, what are we? He said, okay, have you heard of King Henry VIII? I said, is he in the Bible? No. Why are you telling me about him? I want to know what's in the Bible, Derek. And then he went on to explain a big story and a history, and I said, oh gosh. So I suppose I know what you want me to put. Okay, give me a bit of paper, I'll write it, and I'll go to the hospital. And I waited till the last day. I turn up at the hospital, and this lady comes running out, registrar. Monsieur Gidoomal. I said, yes, I'm coming. I know my deadline is approaching. He said, voilà votre certificat. Here is your certificate. I said, what have you put, madam? She opened it. She said, restez calme. Look, we put an extra box just for you. We marked it chrétien, and we've changed our computer program. There you are. So I thought, all subsequent children born can have that title without any problem. So there we are. I then realized where all this has come from. And there were so many other things to learn, so many other things to start taking on board in terms of my newfound faith. Which church to go to? They said to me, if it's not in the book, the Bible, then be careful. So I take the addresses of all the local churches in South Kensington around Imperial College, and I start looking for them in the Bible, and there are none of them in the Bible. So what do? I said, I'm not taking any risk. In fact, the nearest church to my room, if you know South Kensington and you know where it is, there is a building called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It was like 100 yards from my room, and I stood out there waiting, thinking, now how do you go in? To the mosque, I went with my friends. to the temple, I went by my own right. All that. Do I need a ticket? Do I need an invitation? Do I need someone with me? How do you enter this place? I said, I'm not going in. I'm going to avoid this. Sounds good. Jesus Christ is mentioned in the title, but no, I'm not so sure about this. And eventually, it was somebody who saw me one lunchtime eating meat at lunchtime. And he looked at me, and he was a Sri Lankan guy, and he said to me, your name is Ram? I said, yes. He says, you're a Hindu, aren't you? I said, yes, I'm from a Hindu family. Didn't want to say any more. I was afraid to tell him what I had done. And he said, why are you eating meat? I said, oh, okay, I'll tell you. I've just accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and he says in the Bible, if you give thanks for food, you can eat anything. So I've given thanks, and I'm eating this. Which church do you go to? So I shared my story with him. He said, well, look, why don't you join the Christian Union? I said, well, that sounds interesting. I'll pay, it was 30 pence or 25 pence or something at Imperial. So I joined the Christian Union, and I went along to meetings every week at the Christian Union. It was no dress, the vicar who came, a normal suit, no highfalutin stuff, very simple. I thought, oh, I like this. And eventually, they took me to church, and my first meeting at church, I won't tell you what it was like because it was quite a shock for me. I'd never experienced anything like it, but you can read about it in the book. And in fact, if you don't get the book, you go on YouTube, you'll see many churches have put that experience so that newcomers to church know what it's like when they go for the first time. So there we are. And then from there, it went on. I visited Bombay on a business trip. I was now, as I said, running this big business with cousins, and one of my tasks was to create a seafoods business in Scotland. So we acquired these companies in Scotland. They said to me in Scotland, there's no any fish here with these 3 months. I said, what do you mean no fish for 3 months? There's fish throughout the year, across the world. My granny told me we used to get fish any time of the year. What are you talking? I said, all right, I'll go to India and get some fish. Because they just shut the factory for 3 months. And mainly women workers, by the way. You know, because of the nimble fingers, peeling prawns and everything else. So you're getting a couple of hundred women laid off for 3 months with no job, no income. And I said, you know what? Let's do something about this. So I went to India for my first trip in 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. I'd gone as a child. And on the last day of the trip, I went to Bombay. Because there's prawns in Bombay as well. It's a seaport. But I said to the people I'm buying from, I want to know what you do in the local community. So they took me to the largest slum of Asia. It's called Dharavi. It's where Slumdog Millionaire was shot. And I was there in '87, and they took me there. And when I entered, I saw these cardboard boxes. You know, many people in Bombay itself or in Mumbai have not even been in there. I can tell you that because for them, it was a revelation what I was describing. And there was no social media and stuff where they could see it. So I went in there, and I saw these cardboard boxes. I said, oh, who stays in there? They said, well, you know, there's a slumlord. And so I saw a 5-year-old kid, and Ricky, our youngest son, who used to be a member here, he was 5. I said, so where will he sleep? Because I see he's somewhere else. I said, oh, there's a water pipe. He can't afford to pay the slumlord. I said, what? And so I said, okay, show me where he is. They said, don't go near that. You won't be able to get anywhere near. The smell and the stench and the hygiene will kill you. Just leave it. Okay, where's his dad? So the wry smile going around. Dad, you serious, your question? I said, all right. Where's his mom? We'll show you. So they take me around the corner, and there are cages. And in these cages are young girls who've just hit puberty. I could see. They're just young kids, girls, just hit puberty. It didn't take much imagination to know what they would be going through the night and the nights that followed. It just broke me. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, a member of a church in Scotland, the North Church in Perth. And, doing my tithe. We were doing our tithe and prayer meetings and Bible studies and all the nice things. I think, it's just incongruent, something going on here that I can't equate with my faith. I know I'm tithing and all, but this is extreme. I've never seen anything like it. And those girls, that image is not going out of my mind, that little boy. So I was almost sick, by the way, literally. I just came out. went with my colleagues who then took me to the Bombay airport, Air France via Glasgow, via Paris to Glasgow, and then where the car was parked, nice big Merc to take me back to Perth. And I got on the flight, and you can go to the left, first class, and caviar, no, can't take it. Champagne, I just can't think. Just leave me alone in my seat. Sat down, waited for the lights to go off. The food was served, the best food, French, all that stuff. I couldn't touch it. I was sick. And when the lights went off, I just broke down. I said, what am I doing on this planet? I've got bonuses that are going to be paid to me of 6 figures plus, because around that time too, my own immediate boss had fallen quite ill, so the big boss, Azad, called me and he said, look, you might have to take on the role for a while. And I said, I can't do it. I've just been to India, I've come back with this experience. I said, Azad, I can't do it. I can't stay one more day on that desk without thinking about what I have seen. I had heard Christians use the word calling, and I never understood what it meant. I honestly didn't understand what calling meant. I said, what are they talking about? People would come and speak, missionaries and all, and I had a calling, and I thought somebody's telephoned them, and so they've gone. But I think I began to understand what it meant. I couldn't sit one more day at my desk without reliving what I had seen. I had to do something about it. And so my boss Azad, told him what had happened, and I gave him a few years before I exited. He agreed I could leave. He said, I know, I can't argue with you. He said, in fact, he cheekily told me, he said, Ram, I wondered when you're going to get there. Now, he'd been to Harrow and Oxford, so he had that Christian influence and faith in his life. He said, you're into being a fisher of men, aren't you? I said, well, I'm an evangelist, yes. I do share my faith with family and friends, and there's nothing wrong with it. But so he had a smile, and he said, you're going to go and do that? I said, well, Azad, I want to do more than that. I really want to make a difference. I know I'm being paid very well. You've promised me 7-figure bonuses, and I've seen those bonuses on the accounts going to top people. It doesn't turn me on. So he looked at me and said, I can't offer you more money. I can't offer you a better job because you've been now you're the UK Group Chief Executive. I don't know what to do. And so I eased out. And one of the things that happened is I met a guy called Steve Chalk. And he'd been to the same slum. And he'd come back also broken. He was also crying, seriously. And a mutual friend, Dr. Raju Abraham, who some of you may know, certainly Nishi knows him, introduced the both of us. I still remember Steve coming to the office. He's a youth worker. He had these special jacket with all these gold buttons, big bova boots, comes walking into this Belgravia boardroom and sits in this marble chair, him at one end, me at the other end. He said, and so this Raju says, right, why don't you all talk? Both of you, stop crying. You're a businessman, you're a youth worker, do something. The rest is history. Christmas cracker, £5 million, 50,000 teenagers, the most incredible experience. That happened, making a difference. And then I thought, how do you make a difference in society? And then I learned about quangos. Because I did the charity thing, but I said, that's money. It's like, applying a tape to fix problems. Let me do something different. So quangos. So I was offered a role in one of the quangos here, South London Training Enterprise Council, went on from there to different quango. My first quango, by the way, was a thing, because again, I couldn't break through. I kept applying to these public appointment posts. I must have applied and applied and applied. I can tell you, every single one came, sorry, sorry, sorry. The usual suspects kept getting the role. And finally, there was one, the Apples and Pears Research Council. You can't get more desperate than that. So I applied. In fact, I tell you, I actually got a note from them saying, would you be interested? I've learned many years later that the person who wrote to me had run a Christmas cracker restaurant where he lived and actually saw that on my CV and decided I must be okay and all right to employ as a non-exec director on the board. So I get this role at the APRC, and the rest is history. You do one, hopefully your reputation, the chairman is Professor Sir Colin Spedding, they talk about you, people find out, and more places came to my attention. And then even there I got frustrated. I could see ultimately the minister is controlling things, the politician is controlling things. So I said, right, let's run for mayor of London. And so this madman throws his hat in the ring and decides to run for mayor of London. And by the way, there are books I've written which I'll gladly send you for free. This is the latest one, but the other one is Sari and Chips and How Would Jesus Vote? How desperately we need, how would Jesus vote in today's time with all that is going on with, I mean, it's just frustrating to see the state of the country and society, cost of living crisis. You know, who would imagine in Britain food banks being so popular? Who would? You know, it's just so shocking to see the state of what's going on and how radically we need to see Christian values re-enshrined, re-adopted. We've got to do something, has to happen. We can't just let it keep going like that. And I've got to stop as well because I'll go on, and you'll think there's a whole lot of other stories there. How a New Statesman web poll, fantasy mayor, to the shock of every other candidate in the election, put me at number one because of our policies at number one. Not me at number one, the policies at number one, enshrined in Christian Democrat values. And then, so I wrote, How Would Jesus Vote? And then there was another event at Toynbee Hall, and I will end with that. Toynbee Hall, East London, my first hustings, and there we are sitting at the hustings. I'm number 15. You've got Frank Dobson, you've got, who's the guy from the Conservative Party, former transport minister. Anyway, he was there, and these names are all going. And then the Lib Dem lady who had these yellow boots that she walked with, Susan Kramer, and Stephen Norris, the Conservative guy. There was a seat in the middle that was empty because Jeffrey Archer was arrested that morning, so he was not there. So anyway, so there I was, number 15. And everyone was talking so eloquently. You know, seasoned politicians, cabinet ministers, what would you do for London? Transport, housing, crime, all sorts of amazing stuff. And you know, I hadn't done my homework on, because I ran for one reason, because I knew what I had faced when I arrived. And so I got up to speak, and in 3 minutes, and I was the last one. In 3 minutes, I said what I would do for the homeless, what I would do for the jobless, what I would do for the carless. And you know, while everyone else got a nice 7, 8 out of 10 clap on the clapometer, when I finished my 3 minutes, your son-in-law David was shocked because the plate erupted. They got up and applauded me on my 3 minutes. It's like the earthquake had shaken this building. And they're all looking around, who is this upstart who has mobilized this crowd here at Toynbee Hall, which included Andrew Pierce from The Times, amongst other journalists. And it was just an incredible experience. So at night, we're going to bed. I said, I want to hear the 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock news before we sleep. And the leading candidate is being interviewed. And what are the 3 big issues you see in London, sir? The homeless, the jobless, the carless. And I said, hallelujah. If this is politics, and I have influenced the agenda with one intervention, if they say they're going to do it, let them do it. I'm going to make sure that they do it. It's their job now, and let them, one of them is going to win. They're all going for this agenda. Thank you, Lord, for making that possible just by the simple act of running. So even though when after that hustings I was told after the election, so Mr. Gidoomal, you didn't win the London mayoral race. I said, neither did 14 others, sir. So what's your next question, please? And you know, and we went on from there. But influencing the agenda. There we are. I'll stop there, Ken, and hand over back to you. You said you might want time for questions.
How do I follow that?